Hello. In this edition of Let's Talk About Distance Learning, we're going to go over a few video conferencing tips. I know several of you have been having a few issues with video conferencing with our virtual academy students face to face. So I'm hoping that these tips will help you to establish some more routines that may assist and eliminate some of the headaches and stress that you've had with that situation. So let's go ahead and get started. And of course, the first thing we want to talk about is how to reduce that stress and build connections in distance learning. So one thing you need to definitely look at, or basically, I guess we could call it the 3 R's here, the relationships, routines, and resilience. So what you want to do is just like you normally would do in your classroom, and I think that's one thing that we have to establish with virtual academy and distance learning is that you are going to establish routines and relationships that help to build resilience in your students just like you would normally do in your face-to-face classrooms. So one thing is to work on those different relationships and how to do it in a distance learning setting. Create your routines. If you haven't started routines for distance learning, it's not too late. We've only been involved in it for 2 weeks. It just seems like it's been a very, very long time. So what you want to do is help to build up some of those routines, and we'll go over a few ideas in this webinar, which then helps to build up the resilience of your students and to be honest, you yourself. You'll find what your strengths and what your not so strong points are for distance learning, and you will start to, just like you do in your classroom, you'll gravitate toward the strengths and work on making sure that you are you doing everything that you can to make it a more seamless experience for the students. So let's talk about how you start with that. And I think one major thing that sometimes we often forget about, especially given this situation we're in now with a pandemic, is that we do need to address Maslow's needs before we even think about addressing Bloom's. And so we're so worried about our students. This is a natural thing for teachers. We're so worried that the kids aren't going to get the information they need to be able to stay on track and to be prepared for if we go back to face, or if we are staying in this same posture for a while, that sometimes we forget about just making sure that we've met our basic needs for our students. The things that we're very prone and to do face to face, we also have to look at in terms of distance learning. So what are some of those things that we need to look at? The psychological issues, safety, that feeling of belonging. Then they're building their self-esteem and their self-actualization. So I'm hoping that this webinar is going to provide you with a few examples of how to reach to that, towards that self-actualization. But really, the main thing is we've got to have them do just like we normally do at the beginning of any school year, and have them have a sense of belonging, a sense of relationship within our classrooms. So one thing I think that we really need to look at is the concept of how we're presenting our classes. The flipped classroom is something that I think we all need to start looking more at, because I think this is going to be the thing that's going to help you to be less stressed, as well as to make sure that the actual setup of the class is going to be easier for the students as well. So let me just give you a great analogy that Stephanie has used with a couple of teachers lately, and that is if you have a class of 25 kids or 30 kids that you are teaching online, and you try to get all of them online at the same exact time to do an actual open video with you and a Google Meet. Imagine that being, if you have 25 students plus you, that's 26 YouTube videos running at the very same time. There's not many devices, nor networks, nor any type of setup that's going to be able to manage all of that. So one thing I encourage you to do is to start to sort of flip your classroom. And when I say flip your classroom, I mean providing the students with an assignment to do prior to meeting with you, and then you meet with them in smaller groups. So you may, if you have 25 kids, you may need to break them up into 2 groups. And you might only meet with those kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then the other groups on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then they have an assignment on Friday. Every day of the week they should have an assignment, but nowhere in distance learning does it say that you have to meet with them face to face every single day, as long as you are organized and you're going over those kind of power standards with them on the days that you meet. So I would encourage you to embrace the concept of flipping your classroom for your students that are virtual, because I think it's going to cause less issues, and you'll be able to talk to those kids easier and understand, see where they're at, and that type of thing when you're dealing with smaller groups of kids. So here's kind of the basic overview of flipping your classroom. You want to create your context. You're going to then give them an online video or lesson with engagement activities, and then you're going to apply and extend it. So these 3 resources here are really great resources to give you some more information on it. But to give you a general idea, say you're teaching a math concept. You may record using Screencastify, or Flipgrid. You may film like a 5 or 10 minute video, or you may have a video that's already recorded from Wit and Wisdom, or from Eureka Math, or something, or Zern, or something along those lines, that you have the students watch before you actually meet with them. They may even have an assignment that they have to do before you actually meet with them. Then you're going to meet with them in smaller groups. And then once you meet with them in smaller groups, then you're going to be able to go over those assignments and check for understanding. These resources are really good. It breaks down a lot of information for you in terms of what you feel as though you might need to get ready to do your flipped classroom more. We have talked to several teachers about this over the last couple of weeks. Stephanie and I have, and they have had some aha moments with this. So if you need to talk to us a little bit more about that, just give us a holler, let us know. But these are great resources to help you to be less stressed, because you won't be putting as much stress on your devices, whether you're using a Chromebook or whether we eventually get our webcams in and you're using your desktop. It's still a lot of feeds going through at one time. So those are some things that you need to think about, that a flipped classroom is a way to kind of help take away some of that stress and some of those some of that confusion with the way that everything is fed through the network. So think about your structure. And so when you're dealing with your structure, a 10-2 rule might be a good way to look at it. So in other words, for every 10 minutes that you speak or you present, then you want to give the students 2 minutes or so to process it. You may want to start with 5 minutes and then 2 minutes to process. So think about it along this way. You don't want to sit there. I don't want to sit there and watch a 30, 40, 50-minute video without stopping and having a discussion or having to process that information. So if you start to look at this 10-2 rule or 5-2 rule to get started with and build your way up, then your kids are then going to start building those skills that they need to be successful in the distance learning arena. So in a 20 to 30 minute lesson, you should stop 2 or 3 times for the students to actually process that information. That's going to also increase student engagement. I'm going to talk in another webinar about student engagement. And then what this will help to do is give more of that give and take with your students that you normally see in your face-to-face classroom. And it'll also help to build those relationships that you have. You do not have to give up that idea of a relationship with your students just because they're in a distance learning setting. You can still build that bond with your students. So the other thing to think about, and if you would like to read more about it, this slide deck will be available as well with this recording, and you can click on the read more about chunking from eLearning Coach. this is a good little quick overview of chunking. One thing I think we have to think about when we're dealing with distance learning is you have to really work on those standards, the content that you want to teach. And this is a very basic concept, but think back to our 10-2 rule. Instead of just trying to give everything to them in a whole 50-minute period, break it down into smaller chunks. This is not just for lower elementary or elementary grades. This is middle and high school. Kids are not used to learning in distance learning settings at this point. So not only are you trying to teach them their content, you're effectively trying to teach them how to actually be a distance learner as well. So this is a good thing to explore as well. These are all little quick tips that'll help you, I feel as though, cut down on some of the stress of distance learning. So I can't stress this one enough. You really need to break your lessons down into smaller groups. 6 to 8 kids would be ideal to actually have, to be able to have some interaction and some feedback with. You may need, depending on your schedule, and I know a lot of you are teaching face-to-face and then just 1 hour online. So you might have to do just like you're doing right now with your face-to-face kids, that you're basically hybrid. So you're seeing them 2 days a week, maybe 3 if it's their Friday. So you would set up the same concept here and break your students into smaller groups. Don't try to do all 25 or 30 kids at one time, because if you do, it's not going to work effectively every single time. You may get lucky one day, but you're not going to get that every single time. So if you're working in smaller groups and you're rotating that schedule out, you'll still get to see those kids 2 or 3 times a week. That is exactly what's happening right now in middle schools, in middle and high schools, for our hybrid setup. So the point of this is, though, the 2 or 3 times you see them a week should not be the only time they're interacting with that content. There should be an actual assignment every single day for those kids to do, whether they're meeting you online, face-to-face virtually, or they're just doing an activity and turning it in and showing their work. It's also important, if you're working with smaller groups, that you can look at different ways to be able to move those groups around so that the students are interacting with different kids within their classes virtually. So a couple of general tips: have a daily schedule with an assignment for the students to do every day, even if they're not meeting online. And remember, you don't throw out your scaffolding at this point. Your activities and your lessons should build upon each other. Keep all your links the same for your students. Don't change your Google Meet address every day. Don't change their Seesaw connection every day. Keep those same connections, have them all listed out someplace for the students to have and the parents to have, and then establish your communication procedures so that they can actually know where to find this information and then how to process and what to do with that information afterwards. So I really like this idea, and if you go to this link, you can read the whole blog. But this is a great way to have a virtual morning meeting. So basically, the teacher, you can use Flipgrid or Screencastify, and basically you're going to just do a quick 2-minute video to post what the expectations of the day is. It doesn't have to be an Academy Award-winning video. It just needs to be a normal, regular, here's what we're doing today, move on. If you make a mistake, you say an here or there. It's not the end of the world. And you just move on, because that's exactly what happens in your regular classroom. So even though they're on virtual, they're seeing some sense of normalcy and actually how it would look like in a face-to-face classroom. This blog is a great one to look at. It gives some great ideas about, I love the virtual high five, ways to get started during the day that makes things a little bit more fun, a little bit more interactive for the kids. So I can't stress enough about, and and this is what that virtual meeting talks about too, is what is your schedule for the day? It's very important that your students understand everything that they have to do and everything that what their expectations are. One thing about distance learning is you have to be extremely specific of exactly what you want the students to do, when you want them to turn it in, where they're going to turn it in, the whole 9 yards. So if you want to check out the previous webinar on organization, here's all the links for that, including the slide deck, some other little quick tips. Also, if you want to reach out to Stephanie and I asking questions, the WBR help desk is for the teachers, for WBR teachers only. And this help desk you can ask questions about maybe your distance learning. This is all ed tech based. Maybe you're trying to figure out an app that would be best to use or something along those lines. So another thing I think that's important that I think sometimes we forget about is we post classroom rules in our face-to-face classrooms. We should be doing the same thing with our academy students. So you need to create and post online etiquette. What are your rules and what are your expectations for your online etiquette? There's several different ways you can approach it. It can be something just as simple as something like this that I found online about video conferencing etiquette, or it can be more about just the different rules of etiquette, what to do, not to abuse certain things, different regular digital citizenship items that I think you need to make sure that your students understand, that I think is going to help. For example, one teacher had younger kids not coming to class with their shirts on. So one of the rules I've seen out there is you must have a shirt on. So just some different little things like that. You've got to keep in mind, we teach our kids these rules face to face. Now you're online and you're going to have to teach these kids the rules as well. It's not too late to do that. If you've not established your etiquette and what your non-negotiables are for your online classes, this is your opportunity to do it. Start fresh with a new week and go ahead and establish those rules. So a couple of video conferencing tips for you. One good thing is, and I learned this from Stacy Snellgrove at Port Island Elementary School. She showed us this that I think she got from Lacey Beal from Caneview, that was using this idea when her kids maybe get a little bit too excited or rambunctious. So use some use some prompts for student behavior. So I made a couple of visual card cues for you, and you can download them here and make a copy. Things like raise your hand. When you're ready for them to turn their camera on, you can hold this up. When you want their microphones off or their microphones on. And this is a slide deck. You can make your own rules, add your etiquette to this. And then as you're teaching, you can just hold these up when it's time to do some of these things. When when it's time for you to ask a question and you need them to maybe be quiet, you may hold up the quiet please card. So this is just a different way of kind of helping to do some classroom management virtually. Another great one is Class Dojo. Class Dojo is free. What Class Dojo has is, and you can see all of the different links here, including a whole decoration kit for your classroom that includes posters and images. There's videos on doing remote learning for schools, how to kind of help get that information and manage your kids virtually using the same thing that many of you use in the classroom with Class Dojo. So this is something that you might want to take a look at, all of these links. Class Dojo is free, and it has some extraordinary resources that can help you out. So another thing I think that's great to help build those relationships is to give some shout outs to your students daily. And it doesn't have to be anything major. It might just start the first 30 seconds of your class. You might start with some shout outs. Lacey is teaching in the Lacey Beal is teaching in the PDL lab, and I hear her talk about the learners of the day when she's talking to her students, which I think is great. So just schedule like some small shout outs to the kids so that they know that this is new for them too. So they know that they're doing a good job because you're doing the same thing you would normally do in your classroom and give them a shout out. You can also provide little short videos that are very, very short using Screencastify. And remember that West Baton Rouge Parish teachers and students for that matter using their account have full accounts to that. And if you click on this link right here, that will take you to some quick tips that Stephanie did. So it doesn't have to be anything majorly elaborate where you have to edit or do any of that type of thing. It can just be a quick video that you throw together to provide for the students or to open a class with some great shout outs. Also, here is a slide deck, very simple, little post-it notes. You can put your hooray there. There's also a slide that's got 12 or 14 post-it notes on it if you want to do several. There's one slide that simply looks like a cork board. Anything like that. Create your own, use your theme. Whatever your theme for your classroom is face-to-face, use that online and make you some type of a template in Google Slides that you can just show every day. So these are some kind of quick tips and general ideas on how to actually work with your video conferencing. I hope they help. As always, if you have any questions, you know how to reach out to us. We're here to help you. I will be posting this webinar on our same link with all of our Let's Talk About Distance Learning links. And we have one more coming that I'm going to do shortly on engagement. So just remember, you're not on your own here. We're here to help you. Stay strong. You got this. I believe in you.